Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to my review of the latest release from Spinnaker. Hang on, does that say Spinnaker? Did you write this? Did you write this? Am I reviewing a Spinnaker today? Seriously? Seriously? It's been a while. Yes, indeed, it has been a while. It has been almost exactly 2 years since I last had a Spinnaker on the channel. I used to review them quite regularly. They were affordable, often quite retro dive style watches from one of the many sub-brands of the Dartmouth group. And they were a brand that liked to do deals. There was always 15 to 20% off, which is music to my ears, of course. However, in the end, I felt that I had just reviewed all of their decent stuff and all of their new stuff was just slightly modified versions of their old stuff. We kept in touch, but nothing really appealed until now, that is. The watch on my wrist today is their newly released Spence 300. As the name suggests, it's a 300-meter dive watch and it is by far the slimmest 300-meter dive watch that I have ever reviewed. It is under 11 millimeters thick, or should I say thin. I mean, it's no Richard Mille Ferrari, but then again, it doesn't cost $2 million either. Now, you saw the pop-up. This video is sponsored by Spinnaker. They sent me this watch for free. It is a prototype, but I do not have to send it back. In addition, I'm a Spinnaker affiliate. You'll find a 20% discount code in the description of the video. Like I said, they do deals. JOM20, getting you 20% off the price of this Spence or anything else you like from their website. And I'm going to review this watch today on the basis that you are getting that discount. You don't have to use my code, obviously, but I would strongly suggest you use a code because 20% off is not an insignificant sum, is it? So slim it may be, but the eternal question remains, is it any good? Let's flip the camera and find out. Alright, let's get on with it. I will obviously leave a link to the Spinnaker website in the description of the video. It looks like they're offering a 25% discount, a launch special if you will, on these new Spence 300s this week. Clearly that is better than the 20% discount available from using my affiliate code. As much as I would like the affiliate commission, you get 25% off. You get the best deal you can on this one. Maybe if you're watching the video in a month's time, 20% off will be the best offer you can get. These are $650 US regardless of color variant. 25% off that brings it under 500, takes it down to 487 USD. I think that's actually okay given the specs on offer here, given the overall package and given the competition in the price bracket. Nicely packaged as well, as you can see here. I've got a bit of a thing for orange and blue myself. You get the watch on a bracelet, spring bar removal tool / screwdriver, and a second complimentary strap. 2-year warranty, of course. I will show you on both the bracelet and the strap over the course of the video. So clearly this watch's USP is the slimness. Sub 11 millimeters thick for a 300 meter claimed water resistance dive watch, but the rest of the dimensions here are in line with that lightness, slimness, that whole ethos today. 40 millimeters in diameter, 10.8 mil thick, very, very impressive indeed. 48 mil lug to lug, 20 millimeter lug width, only tapers down to 19 and back up to 21 at the clasp. Now I did mention that this is a prototype. They will be changing this clasp, so don't pay too much attention to this one. I will show you what they're going to be replacing it with. Sized up for me, 7-inch wrist. This one weighs in at 144 grams, which is pretty much where you'd expect. 316L stainless steel case, crown, bezel, and full 316L bracelet. I'll show you the bracelet in just a second. It is a very, very mildly domed piece of sapphire crystal, double dome there. The last thing you want if you're going for a slim watch is a huge dome or a top hat or something similar, so I understand why they have chosen that. And it is a loomed ceramic bezel insert. The bezel itself is 120 click, unidirectional, just what you'd expect from this style of dive watch. The action is really good. I've moved my mic so you probably can't hear it quite as well as you used to, but it's nice, it's kind of snicky, feels very positive. The bezel itself is not particularly thick, as you can see there, but you do manage to get a decent grip on it nonetheless. Case finishing is actually very pleasant. You've seen this one in side profile a couple of times already. The case is quite flat. There is a little kind of hook down turn from the edge of the lugs, but not too much. But then again, when the case is this slim, it doesn't really matter that it's so flat. There's a nice high polish chamfer running to the lug tips, and there's also a nice little high polish undercut, which can only improve the comfort factor on wrist. The case back is nicely integrated, sitting almost flush with the case. Bezel machining, as discussed, is good, nice and grippy. The insert's well integrated into the bezel, as is the slightly domed sapphire crystal. The bracelet is a 3-link style, all brushed. Now just push pins holding it together, but I'll give it a pass on that because the bracelet is very slim, and to be honest, push pins are sometimes better on this style of bracelet than screw links that are too slim for their own good and end up giving you problems when you're sizing and resizing, particularly if you do that a few times. The links are solid, of course, as are the end links. Now, as mentioned, this one's a prototype. They're going to change the clasp. They didn't feel the clasp was quite as slim as they wanted it to be. I love this style of clasp, actually. It's my preferred style, but I agree with them. It is perhaps a bit bulkier than it needs to be. I did ask Spinnaker for information about the new clasp. This was the best they could send me. These 2 images, it looks pretty basic. It has the Spinnaker brand name in landscape along it. Doesn't have fold over, but it does have double security pushers by the looks of it. Perhaps not necessarily an upgrade on the one they supplied me with, but it will be slimmer and therefore more in keeping with the watch overall. Case back is common or garden, run-of-the-mill screw-on stainless steel with the obligatory spec sheet. Now the big N in the middle also features on the crown, perhaps you spotted it on the packaging. That is for Spence, the model name, more on that later. Behind that case back is a Miyota 9000 as discussed. It's the 9039, the no date specific, so no ghost date position when unscrewing that big unguarded vintage style crown. That means it's a 24 jewel hacking and hand winding Japanese made automatic movement. Only winds in one direction though. Now watch this slim, intentionally slim as the Spence 300. I would normally worry that you could hear and feel the rotor spinning on your wrist, but it just hasn't been the case at all, which is surprising but welcome. Those set of numbers are also very welcome in the flat on the back default position. Alright then, let's hit the macro and have a good look at the dial, the hands, the bezel, etc. I think this is a good looking watch, all nicely in proportion, and as much as I'm not really into blue dial watches myself, the blue-black fade on that dial looks really good. Now the dial is just printed rather than applied. I would normally moan about that, but for the price they're charging and the fact that slimness is the order of the day here, I will let them off. Obviously, a printed dial helps keep things nice and slim and trim. It's a standard Rolex-alike dial pattern with triangle at 12, rectangles at 3, 6 and 9, and circles on the hour markers. Printed minute track around the outer edge with prominent 5s, and a fully loomed ceramic bezel insert as discussed. Fully marked bezel insert as well with all of the minutes you know, not something you see on every dive watch. Again, I'll give them a pass for not having a proper loom pit there because obviously that would have made the watch thicker than it otherwise needed to be. Now even the Spinnaker logo in silver is only embossed rather than applied, but it looks good despite or perhaps even because of that. Now when I pull back again and show you it from an angle, it all looks well proportioned. Everything is nice and legible, but I'm not convinced that those blues necessarily go with each other. Another reason why I prefer black watches is that there is only one shade of black and it's hard to get things wrong if you just stick with black. And I actually quite like the handset. It's a broad arrow style hour hand and a lovely pointy minute hand, both of which are ever so slightly beveled. There's a touch of colour with the second hand lollipop, and all 3 hands are exactly the right length in my humble opinion. They all hit their respective markers perfectly. Overall, I think it's a handsome and well proportioned dial and handset. Perhaps nothing too radical here, but then again nothing you're going to get annoyed with either. But that's enough about the looks. How does it wear? This is all about the slimness, this is all about the comfort, and yeah, it does actually wear nice and slim and nice and comfortably on the wrist. You saw zero protrusion from the case back earlier on, sits perfectly flat and flush on my 7-inch wrist. 144 grams on the supplied clasp anyway, perhaps not super light. Maybe a replacement for that slightly simpler number will take maybe 5 or 6 grams, bring it down to 140. Perhaps they could have shaved 10 grams off it somewhere else. But other than that, I think they have achieved what they set out to by making this one wear really nicely. And it's very legible. You can see what I mean about the handset. I just adjusted them there. The hour hand just touches the rectangle at 9, and that minute hand, very impressive, just the right length, hitting those minute markers. Easy to read. Outside natural light, the anti-reflective coating on the sapphire does a reasonable job. And you can see that Fume dial matches the dull ceramic bezel insert that they've chosen quite well, I think. You can also see some of the high polished elements. Not too many high polished elements on this one, just the chamfered edges towards the lug ends. And that's another different perspective, another angle of it on wrist. Nice brushed handset, I talked about them earlier on, you can see them quite prominently. From most angles they really do stand out on the dial, particularly because it is just flat and printed. And the pocket shot to finish, this one is slim but not super light, it still feels fairly weighty and fairly substantial for a 40. It's 20 grams heavier than my similarly sized Oris Diver 65 for example. But what am I going to complain about today? What have I not shown you so far? Well, the loom is okay, but it definitely could have been better. I can't complain too much about the duration of the loom, as it does last reasonably well, giving a decent read even at the end of my customary 20-minute test. But you can see quite early on how patchy it is. I know the dial's printed, so again it kind of gets a pass there, but the hands are all important when it comes to loom, and you can see the discrepancies across that minute hand in particular as to how the loom is applied. For over $400, I would expect a little better than this across the board. Overall, the bracelet is okay. I think it suits this style of watch, especially if they're going to put a slimmer clasp on it. But female end lengths here I think would have suited it all the more. That would have only added to the comfort factor and the wearability of this watch, which is what they're going for, being a super slim model. Now, it is nice of them to have included a leather strap in with the bundle. It's nice to see one of these Spinnaker water resistant, in inverted commas, leather straps again after a couple of years. They're quite thick, but they are comfy out of the box, and the matching brushed hardware looks good. But this one doesn't have quite enough taper. Again, if the watch is all about slimness, and it is all about slimness, then they missed an opportunity here. That leather strap should have been a 20 down to 16. That would have added a touch more elegance to it on leather overall. And the dial text / model branding is a little bit weird on the Spence. That big N in the circle there. I think they've maybe made the text a bit too large to begin with, too large for the dial anyway. And why all the fuss about the N? Spence is a 6-letter word, and they have emphasised the 4th letter, meaning that the script loses all sense of symmetry that it could and should have had. But overall, I think Spinnaker have mostly achieved what they set out to do here. 11mm for a claimed 300-meter water resistance dive watch at just over $400 is pretty impressive. I think the looks are cohesive overall, it's well packaged, and there are some nice inclusions. There is plenty of competition out there though. The Miyota 9000 powered 40mm dive watch is quite a popular category these days, especially with borderline retro looks like this Spence has. Plenty of offerings from the likes of NTH, Baltic and Laurier and many others. But most of those that I've mentioned cost at least $100 more than this Spinnaker. I don't think it's a contender for Watch of the Year, but it's the most convincing Spinnaker I have seen at over $400. Perhaps they will do future revisions and variations on this one in due course as well. So there you have it. Perhaps not the perfect watch, and it's not short of competition in that particular price bracket, but it's nice to see Spinnaker doing something different again after several years. If you want to take a trip down memory lane and check out a couple of old Spinny reviews, why not click here or click here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in a future video.